Okay, let's try and start this over.
Yeah.
Welcome back to TorqueChats. This is something that we're coming back from a brief hiatus. There's
just a 3-year period where we did one and then haven't done one since, but now we're back.
Yeah, we were gonna start it again like about a year ago, but global pandemic and all that. So
there's some circumstances that prevented it.
Yeah, not to mention you were busy with school and graduating, which congrats on that.
Yes, I am now a college-educated person with a bachelor's degree in science stuff.
Nice. And your main focus was like physical therapy and, things that would help trickers now that you have a better understanding.
Yeah, so I just got my degree in it's the program I was in is called Integrative Physiology, so it's kind of like a broader physiology-based program that you can kind of cater towards what you want to do. I'm getting ready to apply to physical therapy school. I'm trying to be a doctor of physical therapy, so kind of catered the degree towards that, and obviously lots of other things that I did in school kind of like help move me in that direction, like working at physical therapy clinics and doing strength and conditioning. All these things is all kind of like in pursuit of being able to benefit trickers, athletes, myself.
And you also just got a promotion over at the gym you've been working at for the last couple of years.
Yeah, so I'm going to be our class program manager, which basically what I'm going to be overseeing is our entire rec program. So all of our tumbling classes, stunting classes, camps, clinics, all stuff like that for our current location and our new location that's opening up in Denver in a couple weeks. It's chewing.
I was eating a Star Crunch. Gotta get the blood sugars up. It's a little bit later in the evening, and got the coffee and a
whiskey,
little sugary snack to get me going.
But I'm excited. I'm really excited to be in charge of like really running my own programs and putting the people in places to like succeed in their programs. One of their coaches that has been exceeding all expectations and really crushing it is Soko. We hired Soko back in the fall when he moved in with me, and absolutely killer tumbling coach. That I've never seen somebody get cheerleaders to do standing fulls like he does, but he has a level like 4 or 5 tumbling class. Every single one of them can do a standing full on the tumble track. It's sick.
I feel like that's something that we see a lot from trickers that turn into coaches, and it's just this inherent thing within tricking, like the obsession that comes with it and wanting to like break everything down and understand every piece of the tricks that you're doing. You just now understand these things, and when you watch other people do it, you're just like, oh, I could tell you exactly what you're doing wrong, and the minor things that if you do this, it'll fix the problem, and then you'll land it, and it works.
Yeah. And that's like one thing where I see myself as like, I think I'm a pretty good tumbling coach, like generally, kind of in like a broad spectrum of like pretty much most of the skills that we'll be doing in cheerleading. Like I have a pretty good solid foundation of how to teach those. I got a couple coaches that like Soko that are very much in that direct vein of like, oh, put him with kids that need to learn how to do fulls. They will learn their full. I have other coaches also, like shout out Jordan and Allison. Like, kid needs to learn a back handspring. Like, they're gonna get that kid that back handspring. Which is, it's really cool to be able to be in a position now to like, okay, I know this person succeeds in this area. I'm gonna like help them be the best at that as they possibly can. So it's a really cool opportunity, a new experience for myself, like learning new skills of like how to manage people, and not just like athletes, and like actually build the whole gym and gym environment and gym culture, kind of from like top down, from my management, but then also bottom up by like putting people in places that they're going to succeed.
Yeah.
It's a cool, little like management sandwich that I get to have, because we are still a pretty like small, quote unquote, small gym. We're opening a second location, so we're not that small, but as a staff, we're super tight. So we get to like, I'm still on the floor, like coaching with them, but then also like, doing everything behind the scenes to make it all run together as like an organized machine. It's really cool.
Yeah, and it's also cool to see just like you stepping into that next stage of, management, and just like graduating college, and like, because I mean, when I first moved here, you were a child. You were like
I was
15.
Yeah,
and still had like years of high school and everything to go, and like you were pretty much just found tricking around when I moved, right? Like a year or two before.
Yeah, like a year or two before, and it's crazy. Tricking, as of December, I will have been doing tricking and in tricking for 10 years. So this is my 10th year. It's pretty sick.
Yeah. So it's crazy just to like have watched you literally grow up in that sense, and like, just now you're running a whole gym, and also that's pretty much the topic that we wanted to like talk about in this Torque Chat, is just like shifting into this secondary stage that people have with tricking, and it's something that's relatively universal but isn't talked about very often.
What is your relationship with tricking when life starts to happen around you?
Yeah, like when you have not just responsibilities, but
other goals, ambitions,
other things that are vying for your attention. Because I know for a lot of us in the early stages of tricking, when we just are like finding it for the first time and discovering all that it has to offer, you're just constantly training and thinking about it, and like it's everything. Like literally everything, to the point where there isn't much room for other hobbies and things. Yeah. But like as you get older, the way that you have to interact with tricking changes, because I mean, your body changes. Like people always talk about like the idea that you won't be able to trick forever. Personally, I disagree with that idea. I just think it's like you'll always be changing how you're going to interact with it.
It's just, it's one of those things that like, you have a relationship with this thing, and all relationships have an ebb and flow, and sometimes they're really serious, and sometimes you have to back off from them and create space, and, other times you have to really delve into it and really put work into maintaining that relationship. And I think, just as with everything in life, it's like maintaining that relationship takes a lot of work, and just, it's not always going to be the same. It's going to evolve.
Right. And I think that this is definitely something that I felt when I was a younger tricker, and I would see people who I looked up to stepping away from it. And like people that were like really important in the communities that I was a part of, and just even the global community of just like they were releasing footage and then they just would stop. And I remember in the early stages being like, why don't they just like keep doing it but in a different way? And it wasn't until I actually got older and further in my tricking and had a few injuries that put you out for a few months, and that's when I started realizing like oh, you're gonna have to continually change the way that you work on it. And like those people who were releasing those, monthly, every couple month samplers that were pushing the sport forward, they were no longer interacting with tricking as those top level athletes. They were doing it in like a way that like, I like to do this thing, I'm going to keep doing it, but I'm going to leave the pushing the boundaries of human potential to some of the younger kids that still have knees.
Exactly. And that's, I think that's something that everybody recognizes, but nobody really like wants to fully address and embrace, because it does, there's part of it that like kind of sucks.
Oh,
I
it does.
still wish I could like double cork on command. Totally. Like that'd be super cool. Is that something that is possible in my future again? Probably. Is that something that I'm capable of doing right now? No. And I'm okay with that. My relationship with tricking and what it means to me right now is like very much, oh, it's something that's fun to do. It's physically active. It's not explicitly bad for my health, and there's been times that it's like been explicitly bad for my health. Obviously like injuries and things, but also like mental health and stuff. It And on the flip side, like there's times that it's been like the best thing I've been doing for my life. And it's just kind of like, going along with it and letting it be organic. I think there's a big pressure to, stay relevant or stay at the top of your game, or, like we need to be doing one thing within tricking in particular to then remain a part of the community. But you can be a part of the community in so many different other facets. Like I very much see myself as a part of the community of like, I have a lot of friends that do this. It's something that I have in common with people that I enjoy being with. And I also have, 10 years of wisdom and experience that I can help pass on to younger people within the community. And, that's just as cool, and I get just as much satisfaction out of it as when I was a younger person in the community, going to every single session and like throwing myself at the floor until I hit my feet, I think it's definitely one of those things that's like, we need to start accepting like this flow, and not to say that people don't like are super against changing your relationship with tricking, but I think it's definitely something that needs to be talked about,
Yeah, well, and I think so. For the first time, we're seeing a generation that is still sticking around, and it's doing it in a different way. And so like the people who like came around in like the 90s, they fully just like there wasn't enough within tricking and enough of a community around it for it to be something that they would like continue. It was just like, oh, that was a movement thing I did for a while, and then they went on to do stunts or become an accountant or whatever jobs that they ended up getting. But as like through the 2000s, we're still seeing people like Steve Terrata still comes to gatherings and like talks to trickers, and like you still see people like Sesh and Ish Payne posting in the forums, and people who've been around, like Alex Hunter started in like 2001, and he's still like extremely relevant. So we're seeing people realize that like not only is this thing something worth sticking around for, and it developed into that over the 2000s, but you're seeing a lot more of that sentiment, and that like, oh, it's possible. Like, I've seen recent conversations in the tricking groups of like, oh, well, what are we going to do when you can't trick anymore? Or like, are there any trickers over 40 type of conversation? And like, it's always really exciting to see the conversation turn away from this idea that you have to stop tricking because your body tells you to. But more and more people I'm seeing, people like Gabriel Bryant and Trisha and Justin Carney and, just a lot of the people up in that sort of Connecticut crew, they have this mentality that I think everyone should have of just, oh yeah, no, you're always going to be able to move and interact with tricking however you choose to. Mm-hmm. That just might change. You might not always be doing, double flips or, double twists or, some of these ridiculous one-legged, like front swing hyper, like crazy things for your joints. But,
yeah, exactly.
But you might still be able to like play with some fun groundwork combos and still do some flips, and like just interact with it in a way that like still makes you come alive and puts you into that flow state that we're all constantly searching for in the session.
Yeah, and that's honestly like one of the biggest things I've learned. And like honestly, I'm going to come back to that. That's the type of stuff I want to go into physical therapy for. Like I want to be able to be a resource for people to like participate in movement throughout their whole life. And I think we have this idea as a society of like, oh, well, I was an athlete through, my 20s, at the end of my 20s, into my athletic career. It's like, well, no, you're still going to be moving around.
I think that also comes from a different era.
Yeah.
Because like the generation before us and, the generation before them, they really didn't have the understanding of kinetics and, physiology and replacement surgeries that we're doing. Like you used to get a blown out knee and you were out from physical activity forever. Like that was it. You were like, if you could walk, congratulations, you can walk. That's it. Yeah. But now it's like we're seeing people literally have multiple knee surgeries and come back, and then not only just come back to tricking and training, but like get back and progress past their previous levels. Yeah. And so this idea that, you have to stop, and like for the first time, you're also seeing a lot older people interacting with more, like the calisthenic movement is really big, and like people who you would not expect, like in their late 60s to be able to do these crazy athletic jump spin and like push up claps and like things that are like, that's an athlete.
Yeah.
But, like, that's also an old person.
Yeah, and that's, I think it's all about just, like, being able to maintain that relationship with movement and letting your relationship with movement be fluid. I think one of the biggest things I learned from, like, doing like physical therapy, like being around physical therapy is like giving yourself permission to move and like creating a relationship with how you move within your body, I think is very important. I think like we have these preconceived ideas of like how we move personally, like how I move is like something different than how like, people observe me moving or something like that. And like what I think my movement should look like or what I think my movement is capable of. But giving yourself permission to move in different ways, in different veins, like different, situations is so important. And I think even within the confines of tricking, it's like, okay, just like you're saying, it's like, all right, swing chains, maybe not a thing for me anymore, but like I can definitely do like a bunch of cool groundwork or even, kicks or whatever, and still like giving yourself permission to move within the domain of tricking, but not confining yourself to like one aspect of it. And I think that's, it's hard to like change that relationship, but it's totally possible, and I think really healthy. And will help you progress as a tricker.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think that's one of the big things that like Sesh did so well with Project Soul. And that's like, he talked about it. I forget if it was in a recent post or a post from years ago, but he mentioned at one point that like this conversation, like this idea that like you should be able to interact with movement even if you are getting older, was sort of what encouraged him to like put out all of these conversation pieces and like starter ideas with the way that people were doing tricks. And he introduced a lot of groundwork through that in the like early 2010s.
I mean, just for me personally, Sessharu is one of the most influential trickers to myself and like how I trick and think about tricking.
Yeah, well, I mean, he did like most of the things that people thought of like back in 2005. So like, and like with power moves too, and like he's been on top of the game for a long time. But that specifically, like the doors that got opened with the way that Project Soul was interacting is very much in line with that idea of like, oh yeah, you can just do these groundwork combos and still have a great time moving. And like what it actually does is by us limiting ourselves based on, physical reality of like, oh, I'm not as strong as I used to be, which isn't to say that like, like personally, I've still got runway, like I'm 28 now. I've still got time to like enjoy tricking, but eventually there's going to come a time where like I'm not going to be strong enough to do certain movements over and over again without reaping some, some consequences, of like not being able to walk for a couple of days afterwards type of thing. But that doesn't mean that like I can't get creative and like actually bring in new, different influences to tricking from this sort of limit that I ended up putting on myself, and it's like, that's something that like any time that a tricker explores a new area of movement, they're opening doors for the rest of the community to follow suit and play with those ideas. And that's really important for like the continued growth of tricking and like the possible move set, because that's how we grow. We see someone, we're like, oh, that was cool. How did he do that? I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to do that.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think, watching people like Scott McDonald, like,
man's been around for forever.
He's been around for forever, and has every week posts something that I'm like, oh, I didn't think about moving in that way.
Oh yeah,
and I think that's the whole thing of like, there's always a new way to approach movement. And,
I feel like he's one of the oldest, like, tricker, like, as far as tricking age. Like, he's been around since, like, the dawn of tricking, at least as from what I've heard. And he's still, like, one of the most fit people in tricking.
Oh, he's better than all of us. That man is incredibly good at moving his body. And I think, I don't know, it's one of the things of like, there's more to tricking in like your relationship with tricking than the movement as well.
Right. Because eventually you get sort of spit out of tricking. I had a recent conversation with Dan Perez for a project I'm working on, and one of the things that we were talking about is like the tools that tricking give you. Once you get them, like, you don't need to keep coming back to it. You can apply these tools to the rest of your life and start opening up other possibilities, sometimes ones that will pay your bills, because tricking is still super young. And I think that everyone probably has the same thing that I did when I first came into it, which is you don't realize how young and how new this thing is, and like that we don't have an infrastructure to be able to like make money off of it. There are a few people making money off of it now, but they are actually paving that infrastructure for the first time. So like in a decade or two, it'll be different, but for now, once you get sort of spit out of tricking and you've learned your lessons, like there's this old, I think it's an Alan Watts quote, and or maybe it was like Timothy Leary. It was one of those like guru speaking people. But the idea was if you get the message, hang up the phone. And it's like that's sort of there's a point in tricking where you've gotten the message and like you don't need to dedicate your entire life to it. You can have it be a smaller chunk of your daily thought processes going towards it, but still like have it in your life and have you can have your cake and eat it too a little bit. Like you can have a life around it.
Yeah, I think that's and I think there might be a shift in mentality starting to happen around that. Like, as we, are experiencing how tricking's evolving and stuff, I remember, 5-6 years ago, it's like, you're in it, you're not in it, like, you're in the community, doing all the things, like, being a part of it, participating, helping out, like helping go to events, going to every session, like training hard, or you're not. And there wasn't like, an ebb and flow to that. And maybe that was like,
I think it was also just like a smaller viewpoint.
Yeah.
Because like over the course of like a few years, people will straight up disappear from the community. And like when you're just coming in, if that was someone that you came in watching and they disappear for a couple of years, that seems like forever to you. But like what you start realizing as you get in and like stay in it for a decade or more is you start realizing, there might be something that takes me away for a couple of years and I've got to go do that thing, but I'll come back to it. Like Valu literally had to go in military service and was taken away from tricking, but he came back to it in a different way. And like there's a bunch of people who like went off and did stunts and movies and like it pulled them away from tricking, but like when they have time, they pop into a gathering, they go to a session, and like they're still in this thing. It's just different than it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, like that ebb and flow of like it being in your life, is kind of what's beautiful about it. Like, I look back fondly, on the time in my life where like 100% of what I was doing was either thinking about training for or participating in tricking. Like that was all I did all the time. And it's like, that was awesome. I'm so glad I had that experience. I don't want to do that again personally. But I'm so glad it was there, and I'm so glad that I can like have appreciation for that and now approach it in a different way. And, it's again like in another few years, my approach to tricking and like my relationship with tricking is going to be fundamentally different than what it is now. And that's, kind of what's awesome about it. Like it's this awesome thing that we get to interact with however we want. And I don't know. It's just kind of...
Honestly, since the beginning, that was one of the biggest appeals for me is like, you can do whatever you want with this. And no one's going to tell you you're doing it wrong. and it just like,
Yeah.
that's just such a win.
Yeah. And I think if you think someone's doing it wrong, you're kind of missing the point. Sorry, camera stopped recording. But yeah, like I think that's everybody's biggest appeal is like, oh, it's just this thing that I get to participate in, and there's no
Tilt it back towards you.
other way to like not participate in. I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, that's good. Yeah. Oh, I feel like we're going in circles a little bit, but
well, no, I think we covered it pretty well, and I mean that's something that like we could take it a level deeper. Not everyone analyzes everything as deeply as I do, and some of the people, which are usually other trickers, also do. But Pete and I talk about this a lot, and it's this idea of the death of your tricking career, and it's not a permanent death, but it's this. Your identity becomes tied up with this thing at a certain point, and as you have to separate your identity from that thing, it feels like a loss that you're taking in your life, where like the death of an era, like the end of something. But it's actually the end of something is also the beginning of something new. And that's that realization that you can find in tricking can help you like come to terms with the other types of, ends and, temporary or, like things that stop in your life, like relationships, working at a particular job, a career that you do. Like you realize that like this era taught you something and gave you tools to move into the next one, where you can grow and become this different person, this different, the phoenix rising from the ashes.
yeah, I think it's a big thing of like our identity is built off of things that we have relationships to. That's like I got in a long philosophical talk with Soko the other day about trying to prove myself that there's more to a person other than their relationships to things. That's a conversation for another time, but I haven't proved myself wrong yet. But like we're defined by our relationships, and when we invest so much into something like tricking, that becomes a bigger and bigger part of like our pie chart that is our identity. And whenever you lose part of yourself, let's say like through like catastrophic injury or something, it's like, oh, a part of me died.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the thing that people encounter in their first breakup is like of a longer term relationship. But like when people go into a longer term relationship, you become tied up with this other person because you do all these things together. That's like what you spend your time on, who you spend your time thinking about. Tricking is the same thing, and like any martial arts, gymnastics, any, what's the word I'm looking for? Activity. Any activity that you engage with that takes up a majority of your time, you develop this deep relationship with. And when that changes, it's different. You kind of have to figure out a new version of who you are. Who are the people you're going to go hang out with? What are you guys going to talk about? You know, like what are you thinking about other than that thing?
I mean, that's a huge part of like sports psychology, right? It's like, what am I if I'm not an athlete? It's like, well, I don't know. What are you? What are your other relationships and like what other things do you interact with within the world. And I think challenging that worldview can be off-putting to anybody that's like living within that. And I think that's where, you know, I see that kind of like conflict when we call it back to you know, what I was saying, like 5-6 years ago, when it was like either you're with us or against us. Not against us, but you're with us, or
either
you're not.
you're in the club or you're not doing this thing, and you're not in the club. Is
like, oh, you can have a relationship with this that's different than mine.
Right.
And that's like challenging how I have to view my relationship with this thing, which then creates conflict, but is ultimately like better for everybody in the situation or in the community or whatever. And I think there needs to be more open dialogue about like, hey, like your relationship with this thing can always be changing.
Right.
It's not you're with us or you're not with us. We're all existing within this realm together.
Yeah, it's like tricking is this thing that you can interact with, you can take from. It has a lot to offer, a lot to give, and it's really happy to take what you as an individual have to offer back to it. And, you know, like when you put something into the community of tricking and just out into the ether, like certain movements or ideas that, you know, around these movements, the community picks up on those things and incorporates it. And like, that's how we got to where we are with the complexity of tricks, was just a bunch of people who were, you know, like, honestly, they were just doing martial arts tricks. They were just doing tricks. That's all it was. You know, it wasn't even tricking. It didn't have landing stances and, you know, names for all of these things. And I think, you know, it's the relationship that you have with tricking, it grows similar to like the mind of a child, you know, and like as those first couple of years, you're still just figuring things out. And like, it's only like when you're a couple of years old that you start realizing that like other people have different worldviews and different, you know, interactions and understandings of this thing, and that's okay, and you don't need to go and like force your way of thinking into them. And you know, further on you're like, oh, and I could do multiple things. I don't always have to do, you know, what mom and dad told me, you know, like what the tricking, you know, like outline or, you know, rules were, like
the culture that I like came up in, or like what tricks were being done when I started. Exactly. I think, you know, it's just one of those things of like, as you gain more experience, you know, you learn how to interact in the world better, which then also makes yourself more able to interact within the niche communities. And, you know, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And I think what's also going to be really cool is this next decade of tricking and how people interact with it now that they've been spit out, and some people are coming back to it. And then we're also seeing some of the first generation of people that just never left and are still just on the sidelines pushing along and trying to like continue helping this thing grow and encourage the next generation as it comes in and takes the reins. You know, I know personally, as someone who's been in it for over a decade now, seeing like newer brands start popping up and the community around them grow, and you know, it's really exciting to see, because I remember when we were first starting as Torque, you know, 10 years ago this month actually, and it's just it's exciting to see that like the infrastructure is starting to be there more and more, and be able to support more and more people that want to just give something to tricking. So I think we're probably going to wrap it up there. But Hunter, if you had any like closing thoughts on the conversation.
No, I think I just want to. The takeaway from this is like, let it be whatever it's gonna be, and I think there's broader implications for that in your life, but I'm excited to see where my own relationship with tricking, where your relationship with tricking, or all my friends' relationships with tricking, how they evolve, and then in turn how that changes and evolves our own interpersonal relationships. And I think it can like really blossom into this beautiful thing of like, oh, we all have like a different understanding and a greater worldview and an awesome like appreciation for this thing that is tricking, and also great relationships in between ourselves that hopefully last a long time.
Yeah, I definitely think that's what's going to happen as we see more people that are of different ages. Because, I mean, for the longest time, this was only at like the young man's game and, the young girl's game. It's that sort of 12 to 22 was the bulk of it, and then you'd see some people sticking around to like 25, 26-ish, but and then they would sort of like fall off. But now that it's different, and you're not only just seeing those sort of like people who are chasing the dubs and the triples and like the top tier movements, but you're seeing people of all ages just starting to interact and just love and appreciate this thing in whatever way they can and try and share that with the community. And I just hope that continues, and we continue to see growth in those older demographics within tricking, and also growth within the female demographic of tricking, and see like what those different backgrounds and what the limitations and advantages that like the female and the older generation can bring to it, because we've already seen some of what bringing younger and younger people into this can do for tricking and the potential. So I'm just excited for the next 10 years.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to see where it goes. And this was fun. I'm glad we got to chat.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing more of these.
Let us know if you enjoyed it. If you want to hear us chat more.
Yeah, you can follow us at TorqueTricking. And Hunter, what's your personal social media?
Personal account where I post my tricking clips and stuff is at Hunter McTrickerson. And if you want to keep updates on like what's going on with the gym and where I'm working at, you can follow me at EmpireAthletic_Hunter.
Yep, and then also you can check us out on TorqueTricking.com. Buying some apparel will definitely help to continue fund our being able to stay around and make some things like this for you guys. So till next time, we will see you then.